You're listening to Trek FM.
Hello and welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th anniversary rewatch of Star Trek, in which we look at all 729 episodes from beginning to end. I'm Mike from Stage 9, and today I'm joined by Caitlin. How's it going, Caitlin?
Oh, it's going good. The sun's out, I think. It's hard to tell from my room.
Yeah, I think the sun's out here too, but I don't think that's going to last too long.
No.
Oh, well, today we're talking about 2 episodes of Star Trek, one Deep Space Nine and one Voyager, Resurrection from Deep Space Nine, and Random Thoughts from Voyager. So let's get started with Resurrection. This is the annual Mirror Universe episode of DS9, and this is kind of the most unusual of those in a sense, in that it doesn't take place in the Mirror Universe. It involves people from the Mirror Universe coming over to our universe. In particular, Bareil, not Vedic Bareil, but Bareil comes aboard Deep Space Nine, and after a little bit of confrontation, he and Kira hit it off, and it all seems well and good, but maybe Mirror Bareil isn't quite as righteous as Vedic Bareil from the Prime universe is. We shall see. So, what did you think about Resurrection?
This is one of the Deep Space Nine episodes that I don't think I would seek out on my own had I not been assigned to this block. But I can find, while not having the full pieces of the puzzle, like not seeing every Mirror episode, and not knowing the context of Kira and Vedic Bareil's relationship before, I was still able to latch onto some things and enjoy it. There's always a redemption story is going to be a redemption story regardless of how many pieces you have on your plate. So I was able to engage that way. I was rooting for Bareil to redeem himself, even if it was unsettling to have someone who looked just like the respected Vedic back in the Prime universe. But this was an interesting, having this be the crossover for the Mirror Universe episode story for season 6. That's an interesting premise, having it do the reverse and having a couple of Mirror Universe characters come over. If Discovery ever does Mirror Universe, I hope they do something creative like this. And I really enjoyed seeing Intendant Kira. I have heard of her legendary character, and I love seeing Nana Visitor act against herself. So it was nice to have that interaction too.
So this is the first time that you had seen one of the Mirror Universe episodes of DS9?
Of Deep Space Nine, yes. I've seen Mirror a few times, but this is the first time I've been exposed to the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe.
Interesting. I would say this is probably the weakest, or one of the weakest ones. I mean, I would definitely, if you're a fan of Mirror, check out the very first one that they did, which is called Crossover. Mm-hmm. It's from season 2. That's really solid, and it's really interesting because it basically explains what happened after the original series episode, where Kirk's like, "Come on, Spock, you can make a change," and Spock takes that to heart, and it doesn't go the way he would think. And that's a really good episode. This one, I think at this point, I know that they had sort of made it a thing where they were going to do one a year, and I think that this is an interesting idea for them to do, but at the same time, it didn't really work as well as I had hoped. I know a lot of people dislike the Mirror Universe episodes because they think it's just kind of a gimmick, and it's like, oh, they're the same but evil. Who cares? But to me, like seeing that sort of like dark reflection of these characters really helps inform the characters in the Prime universe. It makes you see them in a different light, and sort of accentuates some of their characteristics that you wouldn't normally think about. So I really do like the Mirror Universe episodes in general. This one, it was weird. Bareil had been gone for so long at this point. I thought that we were kind of done with him, and,
Yes.
seeing him back here was fine, but at the same time, I think kind of not needed. And I really feel like this episode was rushed, at the end. Like it was like in and out, like resolved and done, and that I think didn't quite work as well. Also, kind of disappointed. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there was a thing that they kind of established where in every Mirror Universe episode, they would kill a Ferengi.
And it didn't
kinda
happen.
happened. No Ferengis died in this episode, so that was kind of disappointing. They didn't check off that box. But, on the whole, it's not terrible. I mean, I do think it is a good episode. It's just kind of a letdown for, Mirror Universe episodes, to me anyway.
So I actually have a question about this episode. One of the things I really latched on to was seeing the Bajoran services actually done. I will admit I was a cynic, and I thought as soon as Kira entered the temple, they were not going to show us inside. 'Cause, they're not going to build that set. But that's what I know about Star Trek. That's how unfamiliar I am with Deep Space Nine. Is this the first time we see a Bajoran liturgy, a ceremony?
I don't know for sure, but I would be surprised if it were.
Oh, okay.
There is a lot of stuff that's sort of done on that little chapel
Shrine
set
room,
or whatever it is, that it actually plays a pretty big role later on in the series. But yeah, I don't know how much we've actually seen offhand, because there's a lot of Bajoran ritual and stuff like that, which is seen in terms of an actual mass or whatever it would be. I don't know.
Yes. One of the intersections I really like is when sci-fi and religion mix, and that's one of the things I'll be keeping an eye out when I finally do my Deep Space Nine from there to here on my own next year, probably.
Well, there's definitely a lot of that. I would say that without a doubt, Deep Space Nine explores religion more than any other show in Star Trek, and for the most part, I think it does a pretty good job of examining the topic from multiple angles. Yeah. All right. Well, should we move on to our Voyager episode for the day?
Yes, please.
Random Thoughts. This is the episode where it's the Voyager Justice episode, in a sense, kind of. They go down to a planet filled with telepaths, and a guy bumps into B'Elanna, and she, gets kind of mad about that. And then someone goes off, or that guy, I think, goes off and kills, or no, he doesn't kill someone, he just beats them up. And they say, "Oh, B'Elanna, you shouldn't have thought that. We're going to perform a, space lobotomy on you and take out your angry thoughts. And sorry, but those are the rules." So yeah, what did you think about Random Thoughts?
Well, another thing besides Voyager being my favorite series, B'Elanna Torres is my favorite character, so it's going to be very hard for me to critique this episode. I enjoyed it. I think the thought police meeting a character who's full of angry thoughts but is learning to control them and become a more whole person is an interesting concept. I think this is done a lot better than Justice ever was, but Justice suffered by being a season 1 TNG episode where Wesley Crusher was the focus character. So I think they've learned from their mistakes. I'm interested in actually hearing what you think of it, Mike, as this is a one-off episode of Voyager and not a two-parter.
Yeah, I think this one is pretty good. When I was watching it at first, I was intrigued by the idea in sort of a Justice fashion of you go down to this planet, you break a rule, you don't agree with the rule, you don't agree with the punishment, and yet you don't, walk away from it. What does that mean? And when they started doing their investigation and saying oh, B'Elanna, she's not really responsible for that. To me, that seemed like kind of a cop-out. I think it would have been more interesting to deal with the idea of, justice than actually like trying to prove this person's innocence and sort of sneaking out of the situation that way. But as we got further into the episode and you start seeing this idea of like people selling bad thoughts on the black market and everything, like that was a really cool concept to me, and I thought that it went to some really interesting places, and that kind of justified their storytelling choices in terms of letting B'Elanna off the hook and that sort of thing. I also think that the journey that Tuvok takes in this episode is really cool and interesting. And on the whole, I think it's really good. And it actually reminded me a lot. Did you ever see the movie Strange Days?
No, I haven't yet.
By Catherine Bigelow. It's an amazing movie. It was written by James Cameron, directed by Catherine Bigelow, and it's about these people who they record experiences on a tape, on a CD. They're able to basically record people's thoughts as they're experiencing things like, let's say, robbing a bank or whatever, and then they sell those so that other people can basically live those experiences vicariously. And it's dealing with a lot of the same issues here, and it reminded me a lot of that, and it's an interesting concept for sure, and one which I think is worth exploration. So yeah, on the whole, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I'm glad that you liked it. I thought I was going to be overly positive because of my biases, and I'm glad that you also found things to like. Sometimes you're thinking you're living in a perfect society as the law official thought she had everything under control, and then it takes an outsider to come, like B'Elanna, and then Tuvok to help with the investigation to uncover, there are things happening on the fringes that you weren't aware of, and your whole world just kind of comes crashing down. So I understand, to go the route of justice would have been a different take than actually uncovering why B'Elanna really shouldn't have been held accountable. I mean, she's my favorite character, and it's really hard for me to think of her without those angry thoughts, because so much of her identity is built around her struggle to reconcile those. So that would have been a concept that's really hard for me to even think about, actually.
Yeah, I think she was my favorite character when the show started, but when they introduced 7 of 9, I think that she kind of took the top spot for me, because some of the stuff that they do with her is really interesting. But I've always loved B'Elanna, and sort of looking at her journey is really interesting, especially considering where she started with the Maquis and everything like that. So yeah, it's definitely cool. All right. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps up these 2 episodes. Caitlin, where can people find you on the internet?
Well, my first home is Twitter. You can find me at tweeting under Walsh Caitlin. That's my last name and then first name. And then I have been known to duck into the Babel conference and see what people are posting about, especially as we are waiting for Discovery to ramp up.
Yeah. And you can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me on Trek FM doing Stage 9 with John Mills, where we talk about the people who make Star Trek. And hey, I mean, I know that people might not know exactly what we're doing on Stage 9, but we are, a big part of it is talking about, the people who are going to be making Discovery. So if you want some info on who it is who's going to be responsible for this new show, head on over there and check it out. All right, well, thanks for joining me, Caitlin. And we will be back tomorrow with 2 more episodes of Star Trek, Statistical Probabilities, and Concerning Flight.